the league released a long-awaited report on load management this weekend. David Aldridge at The Athletic, great article on this. Chief among the findings in this 57-page report was, quote, resting healthy players for a game to help prevent future injuries doesn't make those players less susceptible you know what I'm trying to say, to future injury than players who aren't rested for games. End quote. So, and hold on, scratch that. It actually says, historically, they don't have sound evidence demonstrating that load management through reduced game participation reduces injuries. But to be clear, they also lack evidence that load management fails to reduce injuries. So they just don't have the evidence that it is real. But this is a big 180 here from the league on the idea of load management, which we talked about for years. And Silver was always saying, yeah, the teams, man, the data backs it up. Mm-hmm. They've gone through this. It actually makes sense to rest these guys in back-to-back situations and 3 and 4 nights and reduce minutes and all that. And now this report that has like 10 years worth of data, they're like, no, it actually doesn't show that at all. At least the evidence doesn't show it. What? So, I have this as a loser of the weekend. I really just wanted to address it. What do you think? What do you make of all this?
When Adam Silver first talked about it years ago, he basically said there is evidence. If you look at the medical reports, there is evidence that sitting out will help your career in the future. So I feel like I have been bamboozled. Unfortunately, basically what's happening is the TV deal is beginning in a couple months. The talks between the NBA and everyone begins in March. And so I think that's what this is all about. This is all about just trying to get a reputation back of the league that guys don't sit for any reason. So that's what this is about, just to be able to sell every single game, to be able to sell 82 games for as much as possible. But it's, I guess there are medical reports in this particular article and why they reversed their view about it. I think it's just hard to prove that it helps people's careers, but I think it does. But it is just a difficult thing to prove. So really, it just feels like nothing to read about here. And it's really what it comes down to is they should just be playing fewer games in general so that we don't have to play back-to-backs. Give guys rest.
Again,
I think that's what it comes down to.
10 years worth of data says missing games for rest or load management does not reduce future injury rates. Schedule density, including back-to-backs, does not impact future injury rates. And playing a high number of minutes or even games does not impact future injury rates, which you're right. For years, Silver in the league was saying the opposite. They were preaching strong data from NBA teams. Load management, it does help prevent future injuries. But now they're saying the opposite, that, this report says the opposite.
Yeah, and they're basically saying we were just listening to the teams. We had all of our own data. We just hadn't really looked into it yet, but I don't know. It's just weird. I like the quote that says, this doesn't prove that load management doesn't work, but it really calls into question the conventional wisdom that it does. Really makes you think. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They're just trying to muddy the waters, is what it seems like to me, because you're right, Tass, it's very hard to prove whether or not load management does or doesn't work to prevent injuries, especially you go and compare it to historical data for Stars missing games when Stars played a lot more games back in the 90s. But guess what? Everybody was skinnier. People weren't playing as hard on both ends of the ball in the 90s. Things have changed over the course of 30 years. The stress on your body's different too, so it's kind of hard to compare different generations of players as well. But I think what happened is the league at the beginning of the season said load management doesn't work, and everybody's like, wait a second, how could you possibly say that after years of saying it does work? So they had to come out with some kind of a report. It's not an independent report, it's somebody that the NBA paid, so of course they're coming out on their side. And it's interesting as a fan and as a commentator, right? Because you're like, on one hand, it feels like it does work, but also you like seeing the players play more often. Right. So what should it be? Should we be forcing them to play, or should we be reinterpreting the data so that they want to play more? I don't know, but players are playing more right now. That's good, I guess. Yeah, and again, I like watching basketball players play.
And I want to make this clear. We say this all the time when we talk about load management. This usually comes from the teams, physicians, their sports scientists, their front offices. They're the ones usually pushing the load management idea. It's less from the players. In fact, we get a lot of like low-key griping a lot from players. I'm healthy. I could play. Like, they want to play, I think. Generally, most of these guys have no issues playing most of the games. It's the teams trying to, like, prevent future injuries because they're so important to their success and all that. You understand why. But, yeah, all of this under the umbrella. I say all of this. Now this new load management report saying, hey, it doesn't matter. You guys should play. That's not going to have any effect on whether you're injured. Stuff like, obviously, the in-season tournament and the play-in tournament and the evening of sort of the draft odds, so you don't want to lean into tanking. All of this is to, like, build up the regular season. That, hey, this matters. This is all something here, guys. And wow, interesting timing of it all when you have huge negotiations for billions of dollars of television money and streaming money.
Yeah, they changed it up before this season. Was when they, hey, you got to play every single game rule came out, essentially. But really, when there haven't been a ton of sitting out even this season, but when they do sit out, it's because they play back-to-backs. If we just eliminated those, if we just made the season 2 weeks longer, that guys wouldn't want to play back-to-backs. Guys say, literally, these are incredible athletes that say that flying somewhere and playing the day after is just taxing. Whether or not they get healthy or can stay healthy is different, but they obviously don't feel good, and obviously guys are still going to get hurt, so it doesn't really.
Yeah.
And that's why it's difficult to prove, because there's always going to be injuries in this sport,
yes,
regardless of how many games are played. But
so that,
really, the back-to-backs are killer.
What's happened though, or like the pendulum swung so far one way, it was like, so what? You're tired. You're paid pretty handsomely to be a little tired in the second game of a back-to-back after your private flight. That's what people were saying. And I think there's some truth to that. And again, a lot of the players would want to play, but it was like, what are you doing, teams? Like, and then we get in the situation where obviously Curry's not playing in Cleveland and this family of four have spent all this money. And here's the other thing. The league sells this league on players. That's what they do. So then you can't turn around and say, well, the star players aren't actually playing. Well, that's how you sell this league. That's what they've done for years, and it's worked. It's Curry versus LeBron. It's not usually the Warriors versus the Lakers, right? So that's where it's like you can't. That's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow, I think, and why they're now are pivoting back maybe somewhere to where you should want to play, and these guys should play.
Yeah,
outside of injuries. Yeah.
Again, it's right before TV deals are negotiated, so that's why they're doing it. But if back-to-backs were safe to play, then why don't we have them in the postseason? They don't. They play games every second day.
Yeah.
So why don't they just play back-to-backs in the playoffs? Just play back-to-backs. Come on, they play baseball every day in the playoffs. Yeah. Just do it. You know why?
Right.
Because it's not safe, and because guys, they don't want to play the second day. They don't. So they just have to get rid of back-to-backs in the regular season. That's what they do. I think that should be the first and foremost thing. But it is making the season longer if you continue to play 82 games, and maybe they don't want to do that because people won't watch as many games in general. So maybe that hurts the TV deals, but. Anyways, I think what they did this year, as you said, guys are playing. Guys are playing games this season. There have been some games that are set out, but they aren't national TV games. Why? Because they scheduled them like that to make sure that they weren't part of back-to-backs. They did that so we could get a good TV deal.
Yeah. They're saying be selective when you rest your guys.
Yeah.
Watch out if it's a nationally televised game. Watch out if it's on the road. Like all this stuff.
But they know that they're going to sit back-to-back games, and that's happened. Anthony Davis has sat them out. Obviously, Chris Middleton sits them out a ton. There's still some guys. Mm-hmm.